The Bothy Storytelling Podcast is a member of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. Welcome to the Bothy Storytelling Podcast. I'm your host, Callum Lycan. And another Bothy podcast kicks off, and this one has been a long time coming. This is the one which I'm doing all about building my home studio. I have mentioned it in a couple of previous podcasts. I mentioned it was coming, but it's now here. I've recorded the last few podcasts in it, but the reality is it's now here, it's built, and I want to talk a wee bit about the process and what I use to do my podcasts. But before we get into all of that, we need to have a little word from one of our sponsors. Creative minds need creative banking. That's why ATB created the Branch for Arts and Culture, a branch that understands artists don't live by the rules or standard pay schedules. So you can be creative and not have to worry about your checking account. It's a creative space for creative types, and just one more way, ATB will always be more than a bank. Building a studio was probably one of the most interesting and challenging things I've done in a while. Basically, I didn't bother to rest. I'd done that huge big run of stuff. I'm still talking about a lot of the performance stuff that I'm doing. The last episode was Fringe. The episode before that was all about the Vikings. I've been back and forth all over this country doing stuff. I was out in Peterborough. And that was a lot of road tripping and a lot of work and a lot of talk and a lot of effort going into everything. And when I got back from all that, I didn't rest. Normally I take a couple of days downtime just to disappear from the world, just to relax, just to get over it all, decompress. Because when you're performing, you're surrounded by people and there's so much to do. So I basically normally just chill for a couple of days, put on Netflix and binge watch some terrible show or good show, who knows. But this year I didn't get the chance because I was desperate to get this booth built because I really wanted to get on with stuff. I'm not going to say it will make me a millionaire. That would be lovely. I'm going to try my damnedest. But the idea of this booth was basically to upgrade what I'm doing. Now, you probably couldn't tell that within the podcast. I still do them in a very relaxed and basic way. But, I'm trying to move into different fields and different avenues, and I needed a venue that was going to help me. Now, this has its pluses and minuses. I'm not going to lie to you. 1, I work from home. 2, I live in a little box, 7 foot by about 5.5 to 6 foot. 3, there is no window in here. 4, there is cats. I love cats, but they hate a closed door. I've told you this already. As soon as that door's closed, meow, 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 scratch, scratch, scratch. Now, take how you want these as pros and cons. 1, working from home's amazing. Okay. Having my own studio is amazing. Having the cats to go and get a cuddle or play with is amazing. So these are all positives, but there are negatives as well, of course, with that, because I'm working from home, so I don't have that disconnect. The cats can be incredibly frustrating. My little booth has no window, as I mentioned, no natural light. I've just realised I haven't seen daylight for a while. I haven't actually been out. I generally come in here and I can be working. Well, let's just say I get up just before 9, I have a shower, breakfast, I'm in my booth, say about 9:30 every morning. Yes, I know I'm lazy, okay? Please forgive me. And I can be in here all day working away. Yeah, I might open the door occasionally, but I can be in here 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours until somebody comes home from their work and kind of reminds me that I need to live and breathe and eat. This is a bit of a dilemma sometimes. So there are so many pros and cons to working from home in your booth, but let's get into the booth. Oh my goodness. I'll tell you one thing, it's made a hell of a difference. I love it. I absolutely love my booth. I come in, I get my coffee, I sit down, do a bit of admin in the morning, and then the door is locked and I get to work. And it's not all recording. Don't think that for a minute. Like yesterday, I did 2 online seminar courses, video conferencing. I did a 30-minute one-to-one with somebody, getting some advice from them. I basically watch loads of YouTube tutorials. I do online courses. I do admin. I email. I work hard. But the thing is, I've got to kind of start really taking control of myself here. So I've actually started printing up checklists and schedules for the week. And for the last couple of weeks, I've been kind of documenting what I do every hour or so. After I've done it, usually not in advance, because I'm kind of trying to draw up a picture of how my kind of days and weeks are actually passing. But it's kind of fun being self-employed and an entrepreneur, maybe. I don't know. I'm, maybe working from home, because you've got to be really self-regulated. And when you've built a little booth, and let me tell you, this wasn't the cheapest project I was hoping it would be. I had budgeted and that all went out the window, as it often does. But, that's why I'm doing these schedules. I'm trying to be so strict with myself. But the booth, amazing. So it's about 7 foot, but about 5.5. I'm not going to lie, we lost a little bit of space because we may not have made sure one of the walls was straight before we nailed it into the floor. Yeah, it slipped a wee bit, so there's a slight angled wall. Hey, it's skewed, just like me. But it's a beautiful little space, and it was amazingly fun because, once I built it, and the process was, we've got a really nice house here in Calgary, and it's the family home, my partner's family home. So they still own it. It's their house and we stay in it. And my future in-laws basically decided, you know what, Callum, this is something you need. You need to be more professional. You need a space. So let's find a space. So in the basement, the main basement, not even tucked away in the utilities room, they designated it as, look, have this corner, let's build it. And we all got together, and I had to learn how to frame and drywall and mud, and it looks hideous because I have probably explained a few times that I am the kind of guy that can nail something in backwards. I can basically screw through everything the wrong way. I don't know how to work power tools. I'm rubbish at sawing. I couldn't saw in a straight line to save myself. Like, I'm not joking. You put a gun to my head and said, saw this tiny wee bit of dowling, Callum, and I want it to be a straight angle cut, I would still do it wrong. I'm just useless. I am not a DIY guy at all. But here I am, sitting in a booth that I built, and I am so proud of what I managed to achieve. I'm not going to say I built it all by myself. I did get help. My partner, the in-laws, they all mucked in. But basically, I framed it. Then we kind of nailed it into the ceiling and had that kind of weird gun cartridge nail thing that shoots off and drives the nail into the floor, the concrete floor. Ooh, that was fun. I mounted a door badly. Oh my God, did I mount the door badly? Yeah. If you ever visit my booth, you would kind of just look at it and go, yeah, I see what you're talking about. But then when it was all done, I painted it just white, because I knew it was going to get covered. And then I basically started to look at the layout. Now, what was hilarious is when I stepped in, the echo was phenomenal. I'd never encountered it, because it's a compact room, it's great for what I do. But, it was just so echoey. So the first thing I had to do was get the insulation ordered, which was coming up, the foam insulation. We'd done that with the walls. The walls are all insulated, etc. But I also had to decide its layout. So I decided to make my own desk unit. So I had to learn how to use a jigsaw, or, as the common expression, the jug saw, as I apparently call it a few times. I had to learn that. Now, I'll tell you, I got a lovely curve. I mean, oh yeah. Hey, I know how to jug saw now, guys. Hey, I'm feeling impressed. I did some curves, I did some bends. It looks kind of sexy and sleek, but it's just a wee corner desk I stuck in. I'm not going to say it looks sophisticated. It's got a couple of 2x4s for legs. It's screwed onto the wall. It's a kind of fixed unit, but it's perfect. It is actually designed for the future evolution when I get a desktop rather than my laptop. And I'm going to mount the monitors. So the desk is kind of compact. It's a little bit too compact for me at the moment, but that's because it's just going to have a keyboard rather than the whole laptop on it in the future. So it's going to work, I promise. Hey, trust me. I'm a storyteller. I'm a professional. If you can't trust the storyteller, who can you trust, people? Seriously? Yeah, okay. I can see the eyes rolling at the moment. So I basically built this desk, and the idea was it's basically just MDF, or not MDF, plywood, stuff like that. I'll be honest, I used scraps from the garage. We had a couple of big chunky bits. I used them just to save some money because after the drywalling and after the wood, we were already clocking up the money. And then the foam. Oh, I'll get to the acoustic foam in a minute. Anyway, so I built this desk, and what I did is I actually took some moving blankets and coated the top with it and then some vinyl. And just the other week, this is how a sound studio boothy type thing is working for me. It's constantly evolving. It's growing. It's adapting. Because remember I was talking about the boom, buh. Every time I went buh, and I can still hear it, but it's not as bad. So I still need to isolate this a wee bit. There's still something in here creating a little bit of an echo, but it's not as bad. So I decided maybe the vinyl and the kind of moving blanket thing wasn't working. So I went and bought some cork board and layered the desktop with cork board, which I will say is very sexy looking. I'm liking it. It works for me. Feels better. It's easier to work with as well. And it absorbs coffee. No, yeah, I wish I was lying. But yeah, so again, evolving. Then I basically mounted my speakers, and again, my monitors I'm not happy with. I think they're a bit too close. So I'm kind of getting a kind of a bass, a bit too much bass when I'm trying to edit things. But I've learned to not over-edit when it comes to that, because it's probably not actually in the master. It's probably just my ears because of the location of the bass. Put up a couple of shelves on the wall for all my knickknacks. And again, that's evolved because my interface used to be somewhere else. Now it's directly in front of me on a higher little individual shelf unit for itself, so I can reach it. Also for the mics to be attached. And I started setting stuff up. I carpeted. Hey, guys, I laid a carpet. No, not properly. I'm not going to lie. I bought some foam underlay stuff, acoustic foam underlay, and then I just went down to one of those bargain cut-off places for carpets because I didn't need anything fancy. And, just cut it to shape, and it's not even stuck down. So when the cats come in to sharpen their nails, as the wee buggers often do, they kind of pull it up every so often. But hey, it's not stuck down, so I just push it back down. It's great. You know what? I'm becoming a man, an everyday man. No wonder my fiance's so, in love with me. I'm like a manly man now. Yeah. You're all going to laugh at that. Yeah, I look like a manly man, but oh God, anyone that knows me knows the truth. A bloody useless individual. That's why I talk. That's pretty much my special ability. That's my superhero skill, folks, okay? You know how everyone says they've got a kind of super ability, superhuman thing? Mine is talking. That's it. I just talk until basically you run away. That's it, If I was a superhero, I would charge into battle and I would basically start talking until either they fell asleep or ran away or just kind of walked away shaking their heads at the nonsense that I splaff. Where was I? Oh, yeah, carpet. So, yeah, manly man. Yeah, confusing myself today. But basically, yeah, I kind of got this whole place ready and then the foam arrived. Oh, so I'm a Scotsman. And as a Scotsman, we have a certain reputation to keep up, okay? And that reputation is being cheap as chips. We are basically skinflints, the old joke, how did copper wire get invented? Two Scotsmen wrestling over a penny. Said that a few times. Well, it's true. So I researched foam, and there is some amazing companies. I think the biggest one is, I think it's Oralex, and they're the top end acoustic foam company. They're amazing, like the stuff they produce, but it's really expensive and it costs a lot and you don't get much when it comes to the package. Now I realised I had to do a fair whack of acoustic insulation simply because of the dimensions in that echo. So I researched and I found this place called AeroZoom. through, I think it was actually on Amazon I found them. Read reviews, most of them are positive, couple of negatives. So you know what? I always balance it out. And I thought, this stuff's at a really good price. It seems to work. Let's give it a go. So I ordered the first batch and it came and oh my goodness. I nearly had a canary. It was ridiculous. They had vacuum sealed it so much. I want you to imagine 24 pieces of not pyramid, this was the wedge foam. 24 pieces vacuum sealed to the size of a soccer ball. I was like, this can't be right. Then all my bass straps, the same. And I was like, oh no. So I basically laid them out. And slowly but surely they started to open, but still not enough. And then I decided to take another piece of advice. They did say soak them, but a lot of people said you didn't need to. And eventually I had to soak them. So there I am in the shower room, throwing all these in the bath, soaking them, wringing them out, and for days waiting for them to dry. But eventually they did dry and they became really good and solid looking acoustic insulation. But that's also when I realised, oh my God, I've not bought enough. Oh, bugger. So I had to go and buy more. And then I realised that I really needed some corner bass units simply because the echo in here, I mean, it was phenomenal. So I ended up buying all this stuff. The problem is Aerozoom has a very limited stock, it appears. You know, they're actually a really good company, and I did put a negative review on them, and the guy got back to me and he was like, look, we're really sorry about this. They actually got back to me on that review. And they offered me a few things and they basically said, look, we'll cover shipping because I see you're doing another order. So they gave me a couple of kind of things just to apologise. And I actually changed my review anyway because the stuff had actually started to work. It was actually perfect. But, you know, Aerozoom I would highly recommend. But, God, you need a lot, even for a wee 7 by, say, 6 foot room. But the corner bass traps, you know, they didn't have any of them. You need these. I was looking at the big square ones and I'm looking about. And I found this place that says they can get me them in a week. Now, at no point did it say it was coming from China, even though it was a Chinese kind of sounding company name. But they didn't actually say they shipped from China, which they usually do, so I ordered them. The week goes by, they haven't arrived. I email. I get, sorry, they're delayed. Blah, 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 blah. 2 weeks go by, still nothing. I am getting furious because at this point, this is all I've got left that's stopping me from working in my studio. And eventually they arrive, and again, these things are flat. Now, these were supposed to be, I'm pretty sure 12 by 12. You'd be lucky if they were, well, they were obviously one side was 12, but maybe at 1 by 12. That's how flat packed they were. And they're solid foam units, so of course I soak them, and oh my God, the water's just in there. There's no way to get it out. So I have to wait about another week for them to kind of come to their natural size. And I'm not going to lie, they never actually formed fully to their proper size. Pretty damn close, but just a wee bit off. However, I don't think it really mattered because this room's a wee bit off in size anyway. You know, none of the corners are quite squared. However, it took a heck of a lot of insulation. I reckon my acoustic foam bill is probably in the 400 to 500 mark. Maybe a wee bit less. I'd need to do the proper maths. But I've got the ceiling partially covered. I've got the walls partially covered. But I did cheat because I did the 3/4 wall. I only did it from about waist up in the foam. And then I just cut the old moving blankets and pinned them to the lower half of the wall. Because you don't usually have acoustic issues that low down. I didn't want to risk not having anything. So I decided to put the foam, the blankets down at the bottom. But the only place that's not insulated is under my desk. And I'm wondering if that's where I'm getting this bounce from. Now, I can't figure out where the bounce is coming from and how it would bounce under there, but it is bass, and bass travels in mysterious ways. There's your first lesson, ladies and gents. Bass travels in mysterious ways. I have a cat scratching at the door. Remember I mentioned cats, locked doors, every time I'm trying to work and record, you know, I've decided with the podcast, if I get these interruptions, I'm just going to roll with it because, you know what? It's a podcast. It's fun. It's all about being human. And my throat is really, really dry and rough today. So, you know what? We're just being human. We're being totally human. If I start coughing and snottering, just roll with it, guys. I am actually videoing my podcast now. I'm hoping to put a few up. So on the podcast, that'll be lovely. If you watch any of the video footage, it might not be so attractive. If there's snotters running from my nose and my eyes are streaming and I don't know. As I said, don't know why I'm videoing. This is not a face you want to see. It's not. Just leave it. But with the studio, it's made a heck of a difference. Apart from that wee bassy thing, and you know what? It's probably not even there. It's probably in my head. Because the longer you spend in a wee room like this, the more you notice things. You know, your ears become attuned to the noises that shouldn't be there or the problems, which I find fascinating. When I first came in, it was like, oh, this is great, but every so often I hear an echo that I didn't expect, even though it's insulated, so there's things still hiding somewhere. I don't know, there's something lurking in here. It might just be my head. But, I've got my boom arms, and at one point they were making a vibration, so I had to cover the springs because they were exposed to stop the vibration from them. So the more you do this stuff, the weirder your mind and your ears get because they pick up things you don't expect to hear. But the booth is designed for recording. So why did I build a booth? Well, the reality is I built it because I wanted it. I coveted it. It's my precious. Oh God, I think I'm going mad in my booth sometimes. You know what? Isolation. I've got a lock on the door. My fiance locks me in for hours on end and I have to beg to be let out. No, I built it to really up my game. You know, the podcasting I wanted to improve on, and I'm hoping to invite guests. That's one of the main things. Eventually, I'm going to go back to the formula that I originally have, so it won't just be me splaffing, folks. You know, I know you're loving my random talking to you, just talking about life, my life. Narcissist. But I'm going to get guests in. You know, there's enough room to interview in here once I get the second mic. That's the one thing that's holding me back at the moment. I just need to get another good mic. But once I get that, we'll be doing some interviews, so the podcast will be improving in that sense. I'm also looking at doing another podcast with a good friend. We're thinking about kind of doing a really fun, topical podcast. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully that'll get developed maybe in the new year. But it's also so I can create my own CDs. You know, I've got my Scottish Bedtime Stories. I have the Viking stories coming out, but I want to create my own productions as well. You know, I loved working with the wonderful Drop Bear and Panda, Michael Dargay and Jen McLean. But you know what? It's kind of weird. You get to a stage where you want to control all your stuff. And the one thing about the CDs is because it was a collaboration. You know, I was doing the recording and Michael was the entrepreneur helping out, etc. But it kind of meant that I lost a bit of control on certain things, which, you know what? It's not a bad thing. We all need to work together. But I am a control freak, I'm realising. So I kind of want to try and do my own thing. Chances are it might not work and there'll be plenty more collaborations because that's what life's about, collaborations. If you work by yourself, you need to get out there and work with other artistic people. I actually haven't seen that couple for a while and I'm missing them. And, you know, it'd be nice just to grab a beer and chat. But, you know, it's just one of those things as an entrepreneur. You do your thing. And you get out there and you work, but a lot of the time you're by yourself. It's a lonely road. So collaboration's incredibly important. But I want to make my own CDs. I want to do my radio recordings, but also I'm trying to break into voiceover. So I'm trying to not high quality movies, not the big stuff. I'm one of those guys that, you know what? I like just doing the middle of the road fun stuff. Where if I've got steady work and steady income, I'm happy. I don't need to be the richest guy in the world. God, it would be lovely. But my view is strong and steady. Just keep going. So I'm just trying to break into that and develop a few more audio and vocal career pieces for myself. So there's a lot going on. Trust me, if you saw my schedule calendars, and all the stuff. So there's the storytelling, there's the narrative consultancy, which is basically developing storytellers, going into businesses and training, presentation, CEO development for stories, company stories, tour development for some places. It's this whole big bag. And then on the other side, there's Callum Lycan Studio, which is kind of what the podcast is under. And that's the Bothy Storytelling Podcast, the radio work with Storytellers of Canada Radio. I have the voiceover development work that I'm trying to get into. There is the CD and story recording. I'm looking at doing video recording and vlogs as well, just to enhance myself and get myself out there more and just, put more on my plate. Yeah, just more, like I need more. But the whole reason for the studio is to develop them. When I'm doing my business work, I can isolate myself and really get my head down and focus. When I'm doing my recording stuff, I've now got a zone to really work with and have fun in. So that is the point of the studio. I probably went off track there and I started a piece of conversation and didn't finish it. I'm no Billy Connolly. Memory, boom. It's like a sieve. So if I've kind of gone off topic again there and forgotten to finish a statement, just let me know. People, just let me know. Get back to me. Get in touch. That's one of the things about this podcast that's frustrating me. Nobody's reaching out. I love doing this, but this podcast is about connection, communication, being human. And I really, really want to hear from my listeners. I want you guys to drop me an email. The Bothy Storytelling Podcast email is callumlycan, spoken word, @gmail.com. That's callumlycan, spoken word, @gmail.com. Okay, so Callum, Callum, Lycan is Lyk, Alpha November, spoken word, @gmail.com. Send me an email. Find me on Facebook. We've got a Facebook page under Callum Lycan Studio is what everything's under now. We've got Twitter. We've got Instagram under Callum Lycan Studio. Find us. Make comments about the Bothy. Let me know if you love it, if you hate it. Let me know if you want to hear a particular topic spoken about. Hey, if you want to come on the Bothy, we can do phone interviews. You can come into the studio. Come on, guys. Let's have some fun here because that's what this is about. This is about having fun. It's developing this, and it's about doing great things. Somebody keeps messaging me here. I don't know what's going on. Let me have a look. I keep getting Facebook messages and emails. Yeah, this is fun. See, this is the problem. I was at a conference thing on Saturday, an entrepreneur thing, and one of the things they did actually say is always have your phone on. Don't ever turn it off. And even in the conferences, and unfortunately, I usually turn it off for the podcast, but I don't, and I'm getting business emails. So in a way, it's kind of good because now I'm seeing the benefits. Those minor little beeps and interruptions, folks. The reality is that's how I make my living. So, the Bothy Storytelling Podcast now has its studio. It's fun, delightful, amazing studio. I love it. There's an echo. I can still hear it. It's driving me insane. You'll probably see me. I was about to say pulling my hair out. Pulling my chest hair out with frustration one day at this echo I keep hearing in the studio. But that is the studio. It's set up. I've got my boom arms. I've got my sound insulation. I've got my interface, my speakers. I use a Scarlett 2i4. I use a Rode NT1A mic. I've got my Mackie monitors. I've got my Logitech webcam, my little laptop. It's all here. I use a lot of Pile stuff. Pile do wonderful in my eye. In my mind, boom arms and, mic stands and all that. And I use all this stuff. So if anyone's ever looking for this, please give me a shout and I'll kind of go through what I work with and how I run it. And I love it. It's just one of the funnest things to do. Having your own little studio, your own little booth, your own little isolation zone is fantastic. If you want to find out more, drop me a line. Callum Lycan, spoken word, @gmail.com is the new email for this podcast. It's the generic one for all the studio work that I'm doing. Speak to me. Find us on Facebook. Drop me a message, guys. Let's talk about studio. Let's talk about podcasting. Let's talk about life. Why don't you come on the podcast and have some fun? But with that being said, let's move on because I think we should do a book recommendation. And the book that I think I probably should recommend this time, sometimes I have to stop the podcast and kind of go and think about the book because I don't plan in advance unless I kind of know the theme of the podcast. And this one was a wee bit different. And, I sometimes do things the way I've always done my storytelling. I wait until I get inspired as I go. So, with this in mind, building a booth, podcasting, radio work, I thought the simplest book to recommend, and this one I own on Kindle, it's How to Podcast Volume 4.0. It's by a guy called Paul Colligan. And it's about 4 simple steps to broadcast your message to the entire connected planet, even if you don't really know what podcasting is. Now, this is a book I picked up in my early days as a podcaster just to kind of get some background. And the reason I went with Paul is because he kind of had a fairly blunt and simple way of putting it. He tried not to fancy up. There's other guys out there. What's the lad's name? Podcast Fire, something like that. John Lee Dumas. John Lee Dumas also has a book out, and I've watched a few seminars and joined a few things, and the problem with this guy, the John Lee Dumas guy, in my mind, is he's a little bit too much sales. Everything he does is sales, sell for his products. Totally fine. That's what life's about. You're trying to make your buck, but it also meant that it was done at the cost of losing a lot of information. So this Paul Colligan guy, I decided to buy his book, How to Podcast Volume 4.0, simply because it was a bit more practical, a bit more straightforward. It's not going to teach you everything, guys. That's the one thing about books when it comes to these how-to books, because they're never going to give away all their secrets of success, but they'll do their best. And I always buy a few. I've got loads of entrepreneur books and all that because you just glean a little bit of information from each one. But Paul Colligan, he's got a decent track record, CEO of the Podcast Partnership, host of the Podcast Report, author of the Amazon #1 bestseller, Multicast Marketing, How to Podcast 2016, YouTube Strategies 2016, and How to Stream Video Live 2016. So he's got a reasonable pedigree, and this book, How to Podcast 4.0 by Paul Colligan, is definitely worth picking up. If you're a Kindle reader, I generally like proper books. It's one of those things. But I also, for these sort of books, I generally buy on Kindle because they're more referenced than proper full-on reads for me. If I remember correctly, this didn't cost much. It was under $5, so it's worth looking at. How to Podcast Volume 4.0 by Paul Colligan. And that's the book recommendation for this episode of the Bothy Storytelling Podcast. And of course, following our book recommendation, we always have our podcast recommendation. Now, as you already know, I've told you numerous times, we are a part of the Alberta Podcast Network, a network through the province which supports podcasts and is sponsored by ATB, part of the ATB, but the Alberta Podcast Network has a huge wealth of podcasts on it, both registered and affiliated podcasts. And the one that I'd like to recommend from the network and a podcast that I enjoy is A Branded World. It's Louisa Campos, and what she does is she offers step-by-step guides and easy-to-implement advice on how to build meaningful brands that captivate audiences. And the reason I enjoy this is because this is very close to my heart. With the narrative consultancy side of my work, I basically deal with a lot of companies and their brands, but it's more about creating the narrative, the story behind it, developing it, how they can put it out there, how their people can sell it, so to speak, how they can talk about it, how they can promote it. So I thoroughly enjoy A Branded World with Louisa Campos because it kind of falls in line with a wee bit of what I do in my life outside the Bothy Storytelling Podcast. But that is the podcast recommendation, part of the Alberta Podcast Network, A Branded World by Louisa Campos, offering step-by-step guides and easy-to-implement advice on how to build meaningful brands that captivate audiences. Now, the sharp-eared amongst you may have noticed something missing from this episode. Can you guess what it is yet? Actually, that's probably not a very good reference point considering what that man did in his life. There's no story to tell. There's always a story to tell. But the reality is, With the booth building, the story is in itself the story. You know, me learning, me developing, you know, it's the hero's journey, people. I took a journey. I learned. I was mentored. I had bad times, I had good times. But in the end, it all worked out and I achieved my goal. I built my booth. But don't get me wrong. You know, I did speak about me being a disaster with things. Yeah, there was a few injuries, like the hammering of the thumb. Oh, yeah. Somebody actually said to me after I did it, why did you use nails? Why didn't you just drill and create it that way? And of course, I never thought about that, did I? You know, I never thought about the fact that I could just use a drill to put all the framework together. But I was doing one of the framings and holding the nail and tapping it in and then hammering it. And as I was doing that, the hammer slipped and literally bounced off my thumb. But it didn't just bounce, it crushed half the side of my thumb. When I saw it, I'm not a squeamish guy, you know, I'm a pretty easygoing guy, but there was skin flapping off, guys. I mean, it literally squished. I hadn't damaged the nail bed, thankfully, but it had squished beside it off and torn it, and I had at least a good 4 or 5 layers of skin ripped open, hanging. The blood was pouring. It was a delightful time. And that's just one of the many minor injuries that I received while trying to build this booth. I am a disaster at DIY. I am surprised that I came out of it with I was about to say 5 fingers. Oh, geez. With all my fingers and toes, my eyes intact, my nose still on my face, my tongue not falling out, I am surprised. I will say, though, I don't know if I've ever mentioned Scottish people and swearing. It's a beautiful art form. Like, when we swear, we really make it work. You know, we have some gorgeous expressions. I'm not going to lie. The ranting, screaming, roaring that came out of my mouth after hammering my thumb was neither eloquent nor beautiful or sophisticated. It was a tirade of offensive, violent, angry, pain-stricken words. I managed to do this, though. It's done. The booth is built. It's beautiful. As I say, everything's intact. My thumb healed, stronger, harder, faster. I'm like the bionic man. I do heal quite quickly, thankfully. Although I'm getting old and creaky. It's another downside to working in an office. Even though I made the desk high to try and get my posture right, I'm still terrible at it. But the booth is done. The story in itself is there. And if you want to know more of the story of the booth, well, you just need to come and see it and be a part of the podcast and join in this ever-growing story of the Bothy Storytelling Podcast, because that's what it's about. It's about evolving and growing and getting more stories, and I want your stories. I'm getting sick of hearing the sound of my own voice, okay? I want other voices on this podcast. I want other people. So please drop me an email, callumlycan@gmail.com, and let's talk. Go onto the Facebook, the Callum Lycan Studio Facebook, like it, be a member, but drop me a message and say, Callum, let's arrange a time to come on your podcast. I don't know, you know, even if you're not a storyteller, you've all got a story to tell. You know, we've all got something to talk about, and that's what this podcast is. Might say it's about storytelling, but it's about talking. It's about communication, connection, being human, people. That's the important thing, and this podcast is all about being human and hearing what you've got to say, as long as it's not offensive, sexist, racist. I can take stupid and idiotic, yeah, but just none of the above. This is not about rants and raves about things like that. This is all about fun, good energy. And, you know, it might be a negative experience you've got, but just come and talk to me. So there is no story. The story in itself is the podcast. Cats are back at the door. One of them is banging at the door. Don't know if you can hear that. That'll probably be Story. Yes, we have a cat called Story. We have one called Monty. He's mine. Big ginger guy. And we have little Una. So, you know, there's 3 cats in this house. And one of them is the neediest cat I've ever met. And that's Story, our tuxedo cat. And that'll be him banging at the door again. Or it might be Una, because she comes in and needs her Pampers constantly when Dad is working. Oh God, did I just do that? Oh, sorry. Yeah, big boorish Scottish man. Yeah, just let the side down there, folks. I'm sorry. So, the Bothy Storytelling Podcast. We come to the end. I'm not going to mention things like Patreon because here's the other reality, guys. It wasn't working. I want to thank with great love everybody that did support me on Patreon, but I didn't get that many followers on it and it was taking up time, and I decided it was unfair to the people who were supporting me on it because I wasn't able to post as regularly. I wasn't able to maintain it. I don't have a big enough network to probably run something like Patreon at the moment. So I decided I would let Patreon go and focus on everything else. So there is no longer the Bothy Storytelling Podcast Patreon. For those that did support it, thank you, great love. Maybe one day I'll set it up again once I've got more established things going and I can maintain it better myself. But until then, your money's back in your own pocket. Buy yourselves a coffee, or, hey guys, buy me a coffee if you see me on the street. Not that you'll ever see me on the street at the moment, so you'll need to buy me a coffee when you come to the studio. Okay? It's in my house. You don't need to buy me a coffee. I'll make you one that's here. Just let me know you're coming. I'll get tea on the stove and crumpets in the oven. I'm totally lying. Crumpet. How would I know how to do crumpets? Seriously. Depending when it is, you'll get a cup of coffee or tea. You might get a dram of whiskey if it's in the evening and you can, if you're not driving. The C train's close by, don't worry guys, we can sort you out at the studio. Callum Lycan Studios, now where the home of the Bothy Storytelling Podcast is. No story this episode because the story is just me this time. Sore thumbs, sore knees, sore elbows. It's built. We're ready to go. Get yourselves along. Drop me a message on Callum Lycan Studios Facebook page, Callum Lycan spokenword@gmail.com email. As I say, it's CALUMLYKAN. Callum Lycan. Just type it into Google. You should be able to find me. But come on, guys, let's get some more people on this podcast. Let's have some fun. Let's enjoy it. I feel at this moment like I'm on the radio again. I should be pressing a button. And here is some music. But you know what? Let's not do that. So thank you for joining me on a rather manic, strange episode of the Bothy Storytelling Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. I will see here and hopefully speak to yous all soon. I'm wanting lots of people to drop me a line. I want to get you guys on. I want to have some fun. Any topic, any subject. Let's try and tie it to storytelling. If it's not, I will tie it to storytelling. Fear not. That's what I do for a living. I create narratives from very, very little. So, ladies and gents, enjoy. I'll see you soon. Thanks for listening.